Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. There are wars, terrorist threats, which sometimes turn into terrorist attacks, persecution of Christians in some countries, and a lot of stuff going on right in this country too. We have our own terrorist threats, which sometimes turn into terrorist attacks. We have shootings. We have people being pitted against each other in all kinds of ways. And some Christians look at these things and wonder if they might be signs of the coming of the end. They wonder if these are signs that we are now in the end times, when Jesus is going to come back to the earth. Well, I don't know. I mean, if you think that, I cannot tell you that you're wrong. You could be right. I really don't have any idea. I don't know if we are in the end times or in the beginning times. Because after all, civilization has only been around for about 6,000 years or so. What if we're going to be around for another 60,000 years? What if we're going to be around for another 600,000 years? Again, we could be in the end times. I don't know, but it's also possible that we're in the very early stages of humanity. There's just no way for us to know. But what I can tell you is that there's nothing really new about all this end time stuff. We're continuing our sermon series, Let's Go to the River, by looking at something that happened, at least in Daniel's vision, at the Tigris River. In our Bible reading for today, Daniel was given a vision. He's told of a time when there's going to be a time of great distress, but when the people of Israel will be delivered from that. And then Daniel is told there will be a day of judgment. And then comes the verses we read for today. The question is asked, how long will it be until all this stuff happens? And the answer is, it will be for a time, times, and half a time. And Daniel says, boy, thanks for clearing that up for me. If you research this, you can find all kinds of various meanings and explanations for the phrase time, times, and half a time. But I think it's interesting that Daniel says, I heard, but I did not understand. Apparently, Daniel himself did not know what that phrase meant, so I'm not sure that we should be too confident that we understand it either. But here's what I think is really interesting about it. Daniel does not understand, but he wants to understand. He wants to know more. So after Daniel tells us he does not understand, he asks, my Lord, what will the outcome of all this be? And here's what he's told. Go your way, Daniel, because the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Go your way until the end. Go your way. To me, what that means is Daniel is being told, don't worry about this. God has it handled. Just go live your life. Do what you're supposed to do. Do your best. Follow God. Trust God. Don't worry about all this end time stuff. God's going to take care of it. In fact, it's already all written down. God's already taken care of it. It'll be all right. Just go your way. Do what you're supposed to do. And I really think that that is what God would like to say to you and me. Whether you think we're in the end times or the beginning times or the middle times, whether you think about any of this stuff at all, I think God would tell us, go your way. I have it handled. Go live your life. Do what you're supposed to do. Do your best. Follow me. Trust me. It'll be all right. I'll take care of things. In fact, I've already taken care of things. Just go your way. Do what you're supposed to do. And too many times, I think, we don't want to hear that. Or maybe that's not the right way to put it. We'd like to hear it. It sounds good. We want to believe it. But somehow, we just cannot quite get ourselves to believe it. Instead, we say to God, how can you say that? Have you looked around at your world lately? Have you seen what's happening in it? You see all this stuff that's going on? Looks to me like the bad guys are winning. How can you tell us to just go our way, live our lives, trust you? How can you tell us that you've got it handled? How do you expect us to believe that? It does not look like you or anybody else is handling anything right now. Looks like everything's out of control. And there's an extent to which I agree with some of that. There are times when it does look like everything's out of control. There are times when it does look like nobody's handling anything. As I've said before, if we believe in an all-powerful God, then logically we have to believe God could put a stop to all of this stuff at any time if God chose to. And yet all of this stuff continues to happen. You know, as often happens in the Bible, we're not told what Daniel thought when he was told, go your way. In fact, the book of Daniel ends at this point. Those were the last verses of the book of Daniel, those verses that we read. We don't know what happens next. We don't know what happened to Daniel or anybody else in the story. But you know, maybe that's part of the point too. Because we don't really know what's going to happen next to us either. We don't know what the rest of the story is. As Daniel was told, the words are closed up and sealed. We just have to live it out one day at a time. And that's why we wind up having to make a choice. We can choose to live our lives believing that all kinds of things are going wrong and everything's out of control. We can live our lives in fear of the future, thinking that the bad guys are winning and they're going to keep on winning. Or we can do what God tells us. We can go our way. We can choose to believe what God told the prophet Jeremiah, that God has plans to prosper us and not harm us. Plans to give us hope and a future. We can choose to believe what God told the prophet Isaiah, that God's thoughts are not the same as our thoughts, that God's ways are not our ways. We can choose to believe what God told the prophet Habakkuk, that God is still in the holy temple, and God still is in control. And I don't want to pretend that this is always an easy choice to make, because sometimes it's not. It can be hard for us not to believe in those things that are right in front of us. It can be hard for us to look at all the bad things that we see happening in the world and say, I'll just go my way and live my life and do my best because God's got it all handled. And of course, let me make clear that when Daniel was told, go your way, Daniel was not told to avoid any responsibility. He was not told to just sit home and do nothing. We are supposed to be active in the world we live in. God has things handled, but God's way of handling things usually involves using people. People like you and people like me. We're still supposed to go out and do something about the problems in the world, and we can start by doing the things that Jesus told us to do. We can start right where we are, by loving our neighbor, by going and making disciples of Jesus Christ. And that sounds good too, of course, but it's still easy to think, well, what difference is that going to make? Sure, it might make things a little better for a few people around here maybe, and that's a good thing, but it's not like it's going to change anything in the world. Not like me loving my neighbor is going to stop ISIS or something. And no, it probably won't. But you know, this is not the first time that it's looked like everything was going wrong in the world. Some of you are old enough to remember World War II, so some of you may have been in it. The world had just seen the Great Depression. Now it was seeing the Second World War. A lot of people who thought everything was going wrong, that this might be the end. But it was not. God was still in control, even though it may not have looked like it. And God had it handled, even if at the time people could not see how. And God handled it by using ordinary people to do some extraordinary things. People like you and people like me. You know, as we look back in history, we see this happening time after time. Even happened in biblical times. People thought everything was going wrong. It might be the end. It happens over and over, but it never was. God was always still in control. God still had it all handled, even if people could not see that at the time. And God still is in control. And God still has it all handled. Now understand, the Bible does tell us that the end times will come at some point. We're going to talk more about that next week, but what Daniel was told and what we're told is that we don't need to worry about that. Even if it comes in our lifetime, we don't need to worry about it. Whatever's going to happen, God has already taken care of it. All we need to do is live our lives out the best we can. All we need to do is follow God and trust God. So let's do that. God will take care of the world. And God will take care of you. And God will take care of me. So trust God and go your way. Amen.